Are you starting to realize that the silver market may not be as easy as you thought it was, maybe even just a couple of weeks ago? Well, I think a lot of people are starting to realize that, especially those who have just gotten involved with the silver market in the last year. You may have gotten involved with it when it was down close to $30 an ounce and have ridden the wave all the way up to $80, and you might be feeling satisfied that you're a pretty smart investor and that the silver market is just easy money. But understand, we don't have a lot of $50 moves in the silver market in a 6-month period. As a matter of fact, we never had one before until this last one. And so this is something of an anomaly. Is it going to be something that lasts? Only time will tell. There are certain reasons for why, of course, silver has gone up so quickly in such a short period of time. The primary reason being that the large players, the commercial and industrial players, the sovereignties, have been piling into it. And while there hasn't actually been bidding wars for physical silver off of the COMEX, we've certainly seen a lot of people starting to stock up on silver in ways that maybe they hadn't done in the past. And so there is a lot of commercial demand. There's been a lot of volume in silver, and a lot of that volume has been by some pretty big players pushing it up instead of down. And so we've experienced quite a nice ride in these last 6 months. And so I want to talk about that for just a little bit. The fact that the silver market's not going to be for everyone, because it's not necessarily as easy of a market to invest in as some might have the impression it is, had they just been involved with it for a few months or maybe a year or two. And so wanted to talk about that. I'm going to bring a chart out again. I promise you I'm not going to be using this chart for the rest of my life, but it has been an interesting chart. And we started with it on the 31st of December. There was a range that was created. That was something that was quite unusual in the history of the silver market. It was a $14 range. It was an outside day, which means there was a higher high and a lower low that day. And it had a range that was actually larger than the silver market typically has moved in a year's time. And so to have something like that happen in one day was very unusual. And at the time, I think on the 31st of December is when I first started talking about this range. It looked like it might have been forming a channel. And so once you know that there's a little bit of upside resistance and a little bit of downside support, and it continues on for a while, well, that can help you make certain decisions. And hopefully it will also help you to smooth out some of these wild gyrations, because even in this market, we've had some pretty big moves, some $7, $8 a day moves. And the typical day, it seems like if it's not a $5 move, that it's an unusual day. And for the last 2 weeks, that has been the rule rather than the exception. When I got into silver, it was, I think, around $12 an ounce in 1981. Right after my wife and I were married in about 1982, I think, was when I started buying just some little physical ounces of silver. We didn't have a lot of extra money, but I started buying physical silver at that point. I started branching out into some futures markets. And since I had been dabbling with silver, I thought that would be a good market to be in. By that time, early 1990s, silver was below $5 an ounce. And during that time, you didn't have a $5 move, sometimes for years. Well, right now, we're experiencing $5 moves every single day. And unless you got a cast iron stomach, this is going to be something that's going to make a lot of people sick. A lot of people don't like roller coaster rides for that very reason, because it doesn't make them feel good. It makes them feel a little queasy. I imagine there's been a few people that have been a little more than queasy on this ride, especially if they bought somewhere up at the top, because it has gone down in heartbreaking fashion. It's fooled us thinking it's going to go up, gone down again, tested the bottom of this range, went back up a little bit, up to an all-time closing high. I believe that was the 6th of January, so that would have just been this last Tuesday. It closed over $80 an ounce. And then it went up to $82.80, I believe, the next day, testing the upper end of this range, but settled down below $80. And then it had another down day. But yesterday, it settled at just shy of $80. I think it was $79.80 something, the second highest closing in the history of the COMEX market anyway. And so right now, the market's doing pretty good. But the point of all this is a lot of people have gotten kind of concerned over these big moves. Some people have taken advantage of them. When you have big moves in a channel, while it's hard to buy and sell physicals during this time unless you get a bargain on the physicals because you lose on the commission spread, you can do things like invest in mining stocks and things like that mirror the market fairly nicely. But don't get carried away on that. This channel really is geared towards those who are much more in the physical market, those who are going to be dollar cost averaging, whether we're talking about those who buy for insurance and look at their silver purchase as a insurance premium. It's a wealth insurance, if you will. It's an insurance against uncertainty in the future. And silver has certainly proven to have been a good hedge, not only against inflation, but also uncertain times. And so that's not a bad way to do it. If you're saving in silver for the future, that's not bad. That certainly is how my wife and I were able to retire a little bit early and do some of the things that we were wanting to do, even though we were on a preacher's salary for about 30 years. And so if you're just getting started, I would just kind of dip my toe in the water. If you're wanting to buy silver, but you're not real confident about these high prices, just buy a few dollars face value of constitutional silver. It's going to cost you maybe $50 per face that you buy. And so just getting $1 worth of silver is going to cost you $50. So you can see it's pretty expensive to do that. You can buy the 999 fine in 1 ounce increments for about $80 an ounce right now, a little bit higher. But if you're wanting to get involved that way, that's not a bad way to do it. But I wouldn't put all my money in it now. I certainly wouldn't ever borrow at a height that we've got right now. We may have a good base at that $70 level right now, but it may not hold. If you'll just be prudent on what you're doing, I think that you're going to find that while the silver market is not easy, you can make it easier by doing some things that are fairly responsible. So just know what you're investing for and invest based on a plan, not based on the emotion of what silver's doing at any tick of the market while the market's open. One of the reasons I like to put a video out on Saturdays is because it is a time where you can kind of reflect on where the market's been. You can look at a lot of different information, and then you can kind of make your mind up on that. Don't get too carried away with it. I had a viewer make a comment about if it starts going way up from here, they're going to be mad at themselves for not having bought more. It's the same thing if you sell a little bit and take a little profit when it looks a little bit toppy and it keeps on going up. You are a little bit disappointed with yourself, but let's face it, nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. You're not going to be right all of the time. As a matter of fact, if you can just be right about the general direction of the market, if you're long term, and if you can be right more often than you're wrong short term, you're going to do fine on that. But you're going to have times where you could have made more profit or you could have guarded yourself against greater loss. And you're just not going to be able to move in and out of the market with that kind of perfect knowledge. You don't have that, and nobody I know does have that. So just keep that in mind. Is the silver market easy? It's not. It can be quite frustrating at times, but you can make it easier. You can smooth out some of these wild rides to the point where you can actually take advantage of them. There's another point that I wanted to make today. I've had several comments about the fact that this is called the Common Sense Christian site, and I've had several that have been a little bit less than pleased that I'll talk about God every once in a while in it, or our responsibility to Him. Let me give you a little bit of background. I'll try to make it just as brief as possible. I've preached for the last 30 years. Before that, I was a youth minister for about a dozen years on a volunteer basis, and I continued to work with youth groups really for over 40 years now. I've just recently stepped back from that. So I have been involved quite heavily with the Christian faith. I'm obviously bought into it. I believe that the Bible is the Word of God, and I'm unashamedly a follower of Christ. If this bothers you, this may not be the channel for you, and especially if you think that money and Christianity don't mix. A lot of people don't. This channel came from my Common Sense Christian channel, which is just a daily devotional channel. It never did really get off the ground too much, though I continue to put videos on it, but it's more of a devotional type channel. But there's a lot of preachers out there, there's a lot of religious people out there doing a lot of things on a lot of different channels. There's not quite as many people with 45 years experience in the silver market, so I can understand why this particular channel is doing a little better than the other one, or a lot better. But my perspective, my allegiance is still a godly perspective with an allegiance towards God and Christ. I'm convinced someday we'll all give an answer for the life we've lived. If we use our investments wisely, if we use them as but tools in God's service, and we don't make them a God unto themselves, just a tool to serve the true God and Jesus, then I think that we're going to do pretty good with that perspective. I think we have every right to try and be prudent with our finances. As a matter of fact, I believe we have a responsibility to do that. But if that turns you off, if the idea that this is coming from a Christian perspective, or that I believe in God bothers you, if this is something that you feel like depreciates the advice you get on the financial side, I understand. I don't take any offense at that. I can tell you for a fact that there's a lot of Christians on that side who do not believe you should ever talk about money, because if you do, that you're somehow making an idol of it. I'm not neither of those camps. I bring my faith into my investment strategies. I try to pray for wisdom. I try to do the things that will be the most prudent for my family, for our future, but especially for God and my service as a Christian. So hopefully that will help you understand where I'm coming from. And however, most of what we're going to be looking at is strictly from a financial basis, and we're going to be looking at things that are more on the silver market right now, because the silver market is something that is having a unique move in its history. And I say unique not because it's never gone up so rapidly on a percentage basis, but I say it's unique because I don't recall it ever going up like this on a sustained basis and on a percentage basis combined, nor do I remember ever seeing the market move like this based on fundamental principles. The fact that there are a lot of people who need the silver, not just investors looking for a get-rich-quick scheme. Those investors have come in recently. We're seeing a lot of things in the news right now. As a matter of fact, I saw a local news program from Nevada that was on YouTube, and they were talking about this explosive market. You're seeing more and more of that in different localities. The more this story gets out, the more hype there's going to be associated with it. I think we're still at an early stage of that, and I do not believe it's the speculation sector that's raising the market right now. I believe it's those who are involved with things like solar panels and electric vehicles and electronics and cell phones and the artificial intelligence sector, and certainly the sovereignties that are needing it, seeing it as a strategic metal, and also realizing that they need it either to replenish a depleted military supply or to start building one up. So there's a lot of fundamental reasons that are driving this market. I think it'll probably continue to drive it higher. I do expect to see it go over that breakout point of about $84 at some point, but I don't know that it's going to do that. It just looks like it's got the momentum to do that, and so that's kind of the perspective that I'm operating from right now. However, I look at things like this channel that I've been pointing out recently as a tool. It's going to help me to understand that if it breaks down below this with conviction for several days on high volume, that we may be going down for a while. And so there are tools you can use as well. Find a tool that works for you, that makes sense for you, and then just go with that. But again, I want to encourage you to understand that the silver market is not as easy as perhaps it has seemed for the last year. For those of you who've just been in it for the last 2 or 3 weeks, you understand that it's not easy. However, it is something that can be a good long-term investment. And so if you'll just kind of have the right perspective, especially for your particular situation, develop your own plan, I think you're going to do well in it. It's not an easy market, but you can make it easier by arming yourself with knowledge, and not necessarily from people talking on YouTube that you don't know from Adam, but by looking at things like historical charts, reading the history of silver and seeing what it's done, and then also trying to analyze as best you can as to where it might be going to the best of your ability on that. So anyway, that's the video for today. I hope this gives you some things to think about as far as where the market's at right now. Maybe it'll help calm you down a little bit if you've been excited by these wild gyrations lately. And also, again, I do want to let you know where I'm coming from as far as my primary motivation in life. But anyway, thanks for watching this far. For those of you who have subscribed, I truly appreciate that. I've had a lot of great comments lately. I misspoke in the last video. I called Bloomberg, the news service, a brokerage house. Of course it's not. Don't get too concerned about things like that. I've put Moses on the ark before when I was preaching. Hopefully everybody understood that Bloomberg's just a reporting service on that. But again, I did misspeak on that, and several of y'all were able to get me corrected. And if you're one of them, thank you for doing that. But again, please comment in the comment section whether you agree or not. If I make a mistake, I certainly want to hear about it. But again, the comments I always find interesting, and I really appreciate them. But appreciate your watching today. I hope that this will be something that helps. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope we'll see you again next time. God bless.